Conversation today is with Mandi Kerr. Mandi is the creator of the Global Hemp Association. And what first started off years ago as a local in-person networking group focusing specifically on CBD has grown into something much bigger. It's now an international community resource platform with professionals ranging from a wide range of disciplines in the hemp fiber space. In full disclosure, I'm a member of the association, and I must credit its rich collection of online content, which has helped me better understand the broad hemp industry and the wide range of applications for how the plant fiber can be used. I'm Don Davidson, and this is the Regenerative Agriculture Podcast. Thanks for being here. We are live, and today we're going to talk about hemp here with Mandi Kerr. Mandi, thanks so much for being here, and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited. You know, this is my jam.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna kick right into this. How does Mandi Kerr get into the hemp space?
Oh, it's something I've always been passionate about, but I had a real aha moment when this plastic topic kept coming up and the understanding that, plastics have really only been around or heavily manufactured since hemp has been unavailable or no longer a resource. And so for me, that was an aha moment that all along we've had a solution to a problem we're creating and we needed to put a voice behind it.
So it started from that, and then was that the origin of what ended up being the Global Hemp Association, or were there other steps in between there?
Oh, yes, lots. I started originally in Utah. I'm from Utah, and I wanted to give a voice, like I said, an opportunity when I realized that there wasn't much of a platform for people within the industry or professionals looking to get into the industry to connect and learn and meet, the who's who or who's validated. And so I started hosting live events in Utah and then switched over to national events and realizing we needed even global support to really move the industry. And then when COVID happened, I switched from live in-person events to face-to-face or to Zoom, over Zoom and virtual events. And so since then, I've done 400 plus interviews and different meetings with lots of content. And so
when you first got started in Utah, what year was that?
It's been 3 years ago now.
So had the Farm Bill been passed yet at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So the Farm Bill happened, then you jump in. And so, I kind of came into the space around the same time. And at that point, like the cannabinoids were really talking point. And I see that, okay, yeah, that has a place, but probably the long tail commercial opportunity is in some of the more industrial applications with fiber and grain and things like that. When you first started having those in-person events in Utah, what was the interest in the space at that point?
All CBD.
Oh, okay.
All CBD. In fact, we originally started as CBD Collective. But again, and I still have seen this, we talk about the transition over the years and what we've seen. I just attended an event that was heavily focused on the fiber and grain side, the industrial market or the big ag. And less on the cannabinoid side. But the cannabinoid side is what people still know. And when I even talk about, hey, I run a Global Hemp Association, people say, oh, what, like CBD? Well, kind of, that's a piece of it, right? But the majority of the market knows CBD. And so hemp and CBD are definitely tied together.
So when you first launched the Global Hemp Association, what was that process like? Was it just purely experimental, where you started having the Zoom events that you mentioned, and then just the network effect took off from there?
Yes. Well, so I've got a background in B2B networking and hosting events. And so for years, I've hosted B2B events either for companies, either going to trade shows to generate leads, or on a membership base where you would pay a membership based on who you were and who you were trying to meet. And it was really to help businesses on a B2B level, generate revenue-minded connections. And so it's also very much my personality where I'm passionate. And so I fell into that in the cannabis space.
And so with those initial members, was it purely US only? Because if I'm correct, and since I'm a member, so I take full advantage of this platform and love being the part of the community, I see a lot of just international participants as well. I'm curious to see what that evolution has been like.
Well, and I think that's been the exciting thing that's come with the pandemic and with COVID, right? I would have never had the opportunity to meet the number of people you included if it wasn't for Zoom. And understanding, the United States does not have the research or the knowledge or the tools that some of the other countries do that have had the opportunity to study it. And so being able to open up and bridge those gaps in communication and policy and standards and the entire supply chain has been extremely beneficial through Zoom. And so when I host eight to 12 meetings per month and am inviting people, Zoom is much easier to connect with. However, we are still hosting most of our meetings from 9 to 5, in the United States. And so that definitely limits international engagement. But that's our purpose of keeping them online and making them available for people to view afterwards, is so that we can still share that information.
Yeah, I'm excited as this whole space matures and to capture that knowledge from international researchers and people that have been working in this space. I when I first kind of was introduced to the hemp space, I was having a work assignment in the Netherlands with a research university there, and they were talking about hemp fiber, and I'm like, what is this? Like, and they said, well, you really need to know about this because this is really going to have a big impact in just like global raw materials, supply chains, and just it opens up completely new uses for this fascinating agricultural product that for a long time the U.S. has just been missing out on. And so that's what was my big aha moment to realize, oh, we need to kind of wake up about this and realizing that this isn't just CBD. There's a lot of industrial applications in play here as well.
Everything. I say to people all the time, look around, and nearly everything we see can be made or involve hemp, right? Whether it's the plastic, containers for our pots or our, headphones or the rubber inside of our headphones, all of it can potentially be.
So, as someone that has done so much within this space and connected with so many people, certainly, the vast majority of your interactions are people that already kind of know or at least have a working knowledge of this industry. But for like the naysayers out there, the skeptics, I mean, what's the kind of Mandi Kerr's initial talking point to somebody that's like, I don't even know anything about this, and why should we even care?
I think most of what I hear when people say, well, what do you do? And I say, well, I run a Global Hemp Association. And they'll say, a what? Or they'll say, oh, like CBD or hemp flower, or you smoke? I'll say, well, kind of, except for we're looking to build cars and houses and feed people and increase the yields on agriculture. And any of those talking points, I'll get an eyebrow raise. And as soon as I do, it's like, now we're talking. Now I've started a discussion and opened conversation. And I've had many people say, I watched one of your videos and have now watched 4 or 5, where now I can start the conversation with my boss, who's the superintendent of this huge construction company, right? Or may have manufacturing capabilities, but they were able to learn just enough to then spark a conversation that bridges that gap for manufacturing hemp or, increasing yields on farms.
I've found that there's this balance between the production push and then the commercial business pull. And so that's why I think like we're at this interesting point in the kind of the trajectory of the industrial hemp space of what is that balance and what are you seeing out there in terms of like, do we need obviously farmers can produce it, but they're not going to grow it unless they can, monetize it with a decent margin. But until that becomes more mainstream, there probably needs to be more commercial pull and more larger companies that are going to introduce applications where they can use the fiber. What have you seen around kind of that balance of production versus commercialization?
Definitely seeing vertical integration right now, right? So that end product is securing input, because obviously input affects output, right? And so we're seeing a lot of vertical integration. And I think until we're seeing more processing, where more farmers have accessibility to bring crop, we can't hardly ask them to grow the crop. And so I think next year and in the next 2 years, we're going to start seeing a lot of increased processing that then may diversify markets. But, these contracts that, are coming in and they'll say, get an agreement. One of my members has a great agreement or a contract for tires, for example, right? They're going to be doing a lot of spot buying. And so I think it's going to be a matter of where does that farmer go to know who that contract is, and where does the owner of that contract, the company, they're going to be contracting directly to the farmers with seed in hand that this is the fiber and the genetic that they need.
Mm-hmm. Is that the case in both the U.S. and outside the U.S., or are there any contrasting differences there between those two markets?
I think it depends on where, right? If we're in Europe where they've been, or China where they've been processing for years, or even over in India, where they've been able to spin, their textile space is very dominant. So that's a lot less, but still, depending on the end use, really determines the quality of product. And so you will see, I think, vertical integration or a more a closer supply chain, less sourcing, and the contract is actually directly related to that farm or connected to that farm.
I see. Are there any compliance hurdles yet or regulatory issues that would prevent that right now?
Yeah, I think there's lots. I had a really good discussion this weekend when we were out at the event or conference with Hanna Gabrilova over in Czech Republic. She said, figuring out the value of the supply chain has to be done before standards are understood. And so I think that, again, figuring out, what is the value of each of these pieces, the hurd, the fiber, the dust, what's waste, what's your main product, and then what are each of those sub-products worth. And I think before that's determined, we can't really figure out standards, and then regulations are hard to set when we don't have standards.
You raised a good point on standards. I was talking with a commercial end user, and they're basically trying to kind of essentially displace cotton as in textile applications for clothing, fashion, things like that. And so when you talk about standards, I think because there's obviously very very preset standards on the cotton industry, but we're not quite there in the hemp side.
Well, and everybody's machine is different, especially in the United States. We don't have the technology. There is a couple of mills that are able to spin or degum, but a handful of them. We need hundreds of them, right? And so volume-wise, it's very hard to know who is that one company that's doing it, and then what's the volume they can actually fulfill. But each mill has a different standard. Your grade A for your machine is going to be different than my grade A for my machine because there's no real technology. It's all just, potentially cotton mill technology that's been switched over to process hemp. But it's not necessarily the consistent way to process or so forth. So yeah, we've got a lot to work through.
And I would think that that also has to impact, let's say like a large company, if they want to start using hemp fiber as a raw material input for one of their end products. I mean, they're going to have very specific specifications for what that product is going to be. I would think that, since now there's different equipment and different processing that goes into play, that's probably a big challenge right now. I would see that.
Well, I think that's why we're going to see so much vertical integration, right? The farm is going to have an SOP that is specific to that mill's process right now. Or at least that's what I'm seeing, as these contracts and these people that are able to take seed to garment have control of that supply chain.
Well, I think this is where Global Hemp Association really does a lot of value to kind of bring all this stuff together and bring and open up these conversations. So let's kind of go back to attention on that topic. What is the Global Hemp Association today? How many members right now, and what's the global coverage that you currently represent?
Okay, so this is where I always get tricky. Numbers get me because I think that what we've been able to do on reach is so much better, but we have about 160 paying members right now. We just started accepting memberships less than a year ago. So we've done pretty good on our membership sales. We have about 700 people a month that are logging in. We're hosting about 8 meetings a month, virtual meetings. And then we do a virtual podcast that we launch, say 5 to 10 per month. I've been inconsistent I've been trying to travel to as many events as I can. And so when I'm away, I take full advantage of that. But our events are focused, our virtual events, we're getting 50 to 100 people per meeting that log in. And I would say we're probably 30% international on our attendance. Our textile space, we have more international attendance, which makes sense. But the construction and building material is very much a bigger US audience compared. And I think that really speaks to standards and the way that the US standards and regulations in that space go down to county, not just state or country, where other countries don't have that. So yeah. So membership, we're a membership-based organization. Members, you can find us on globalhempassociation.org. We also have just recently launched a community platform, which I'm really excited about. When we talk about a way to bring people together, we've branded it as the Hemp Hallway, where people log into the Hemp Hallway to connect, list projects, join groups, forums. There's a chat and connect platform. So after you leave an event, you have a way to actually connect with those people. And then also all of our members have access to past recorded content. We just recently partnered on a media partnership with Hemp Today. And so media and content on the text and news side is also going to be very readily available. So yeah, there's lots of partnerships that are coming down the pipeline for members and member benefits. And it's all accessible on a digital platform now, not just face-to-face events.
But I think that adds a lot of value to the platform too, because what I found were, with the launch of the Hemp Hallway, to be able to go and just see the wide range of people across all areas of industry, whether they're on the production side, the processing, or commercial end users. And that's fascinating to be able to see that, wow, the space isn't going to go away anytime soon. It's certainly not slowing down.
No, well, and you kind of said that earlier, like, what was my start? I felt like I picked up the plane and it was already flying. And then I held on and kind of adjusted based on where we felt need was. And are we really focused on our members and focused on the people? There's so many organizations that are focusing on the lobbying and legislation, and we skipped over this, this supply chain that's fragmented. And so, yeah, my goal is just to connect that.
So with new members coming on the platform, I mean, what's kind of like the first step 1, 2, 3 for new members to take full advantage and just like immerse themselves within the community?
Oh, awesome. So they request an invitation or they'll be sent an invitation. Any of our members that are already on the platform can invite other people to join as well. Then once they've created a platform or a profile, they can join a membership level based on what privileges or what benefits they want. And then I think the biggest benefit is you can register and join events and different forums or news forums. So you can search content, connect with people at a pretty low or reasonable membership price. And then it really immersing yourself in the content, searching. If you're into textiles, pull up on our platform, the textiles, and there's 50 something videos or articles that are related to textiles. Being able to really, lean into some of the media that's transcribed and say, hey, there's this company that joined. Now they're on this platform and I can start generating that relationship or engaging where they're also engaging. And so it creates a network and a community. But yeah, I think my biggest is, getting engaged and reaching out.
I'm always fascinated just with the business model of community platforms like this. When you got started, did you have kind of like a set execution plan, or was it just like, hey, I'm just going to dive in and learn as we go and keep building this network one member at a time?
Execution plan, yes, but it looks nothing like what we're doing today. I had no idea how big this industry was, and I had no idea how broken it was. Even someone that was in it and I understood like the banking problems and my texting app has been shut down 4 times because my link is associated to a hemp company, And so things like that are just like constant hurdles that we've had to pivot on a regular basis. And I think I hear that more than not within this industry is we have to be able to pivot. And so yes, I do. Like I said, I've got a background in doing just exactly what I'm doing now, but it wasn't industry specific. It was like a business title or company specific, not necessarily the hemp industry. And the hemp industry is so big. I said for a long time that I'm eating an elephant with a baby spoon. Like I don't even get a fork and a knife. It is so much. And so, where I do know we're successful and the feedback I keep getting is the connectivity and the value of the connectivity. And so I've focused there knowing that, the next projects are much larger than what I originally even thought I was capable of doing. But I've built a team. Yeah, the industry is passionate and they're very connected. And so being able to build a team of advisors that are, leaders in the industry definitely has changed where we as a company or as an organization can do and go and the benefits we can provide.
So when you first launched the association, since then, what have been the biggest changes in just across the broad hemp space?
Um, the Delta 8, I would say, and I think the shift in the CBD, that CBD is no longer a focus in discussions.
Because at that point, it was you mentioned that hemp fiber probably just wasn't even on much on anybody's radar.
I don't even know if it's not radar. I mean, yes, radar, but I think that those that are in the industry, I think, saw the value. It's where is the money, right? And I think this boom has finally exhausted itself. There's so much CBD on the market, it's crazy. And so until that levels back out, I think we're looking at a new focus. And we've shifted from a horticulture focus to an agriculture. We really are talking big ag, big manufacturing, big energy opportunities, big tax, savings around the carbon credits.
Got it. In terms of the next few years forward, where do you see GHA going? To with this whole space accelerating, I would assume like you're going to continue to pivot and iterate and just keep doing more with the platform.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely linking up with other associations. We've had a lot of associations that have reached out that their members need support. We've been focused for the last year and a half on interviews and getting content out, and that's given us opportunity to meet new people and open doors. And so we're seeing a lot of associations say, hey, we need support. We just don't have the content that you do. And so how can we offer what you have to our members? And so I want this platform to be a place where I didn't create this for me to make money. I created it to bridge this gap. And so I want this platform to be a place where those associations can also log in. And then definitely building the infrastructure, putting processing facilities in place and setting up co-op opportunities or something similar to a co-op opportunity. I don't know what to call it yet, but not the general co-op that you hear because it's pretty broken. We have an opportunity to recreate that. And then being a key influence as a go-to resource for, connections, education, on an international, on a global scale, not just the US.
Something else I'd be curious to get your feedback on is, as this industry moves forward and matures, there has to be just new jobs, new career paths that are going to be opened up that just don't even exist today, or maybe in their just like their small little baby stage. And I do a lot of networking with academics in the agricultural space, and this is the topic that comes up. From your standpoint, since you have this broad network and across all areas of the industry, if you're speaking to like a group of young professionals or soon-to-be graduates, whether they're in engineering, biochemistry, ag. I mean, what's your advice to somebody that really wants to take a hard look at this in terms of making a career of this?
I say all the time, what are you passionate about? And focus on something in that space, right? Sustainability is a focus. Consumers are paying with their dollar on a product that has a story. They want to know where it comes from. And for the first time, we have an opportunity to sell the message that we're profitable and sustainable, and we can grow our own home, right? We can grow our own clothes. We can. So I think being able to take advantage of the consumer driving the market and putting a product out there that is more sustainable, that is eco-friendly, that is profitable, right? And in turn, by putting product out, whether it's a bioplastic or a car body part, literally anything, it gives our farmers an opportunity to introduce a new crop. So, I think that there's twofold, but wherever that, I'm super passionate about construction and building materials. The carbon piece is something not to mess around with. And I would say that that's something to pay attention to is the tech, the blockchain in the space, the carbon credits within the space.
You mentioned two things that I hear quite often: blockchain and carbon credits. And oftentimes, when I talk to somebody that that is kind of like a little bit knowledgeable, but maybe not fully aware of like, how this whole thing was. I often joke that, carbon credits are very much like blockchain, where people know about the phrase, but if you just say, hey, give me a 2 sentence description, you kind of get the deer in the headlights. But you mentioned that with carbon credits. So, can you kind of expand on that for somebody that maybe out there in the audience that just they're familiar with the topic, but they don't really know how to best define it? And then step two, then how does hemp fit into that whole area?
Okay, so on a global scale, global warming is at the forefront of the conversations, right? When it comes to especially sustainability and what is the carbon footprint and what is the impact that we have. And the US has not signed off on the agreement to impose penalties for poor practices, right? However, it's coming because most every other country has signed off onto this. And so the reason I bring it up is it is at the forefront of the discussion on the global scale. And with that, we know then it's coming down, and the value of that credit is going to be worth more as penalties are implied. And the credit is issued based on improvement, or it's an earned. You don't walk in and say, hey, I want to buy so many credits, right? You test your soil as a farmer prior to planting a crop, say hemp, and the hemp increases the carbon footprint by X% or gives this much improvement, and you're paid or issued a credit based on that improvement, right? So it's tricky, and the process is being reviewed a lot, right? And there's only a few people. As you test the soil, I can't go out and test my soil and say, hey, this is the result I get. It has to be somebody that's certified to issue that credit. And so again, knowing where that comes. And there's a lot of people out there right now that are saying, we're going to go out and buy up all these carbon credits. Why? Because they know that in 4 years, when there's a penalty for the carbon footprint, those steel or concrete companies that have poor practices or that are negatively impacting the environment are going to be fighting for that credit to be a carbon neutral company. And as the consumer, this kind of goes back to the consumer, right? If the consumer is driving the market and wants to know the product they're buying is more sustainable, the consumer is paying with that dollar, and willing to put the dollar where that story or where that carbon footprint is. And so, or that message. And so circling back around that, the carbon credit itself is becoming a currency to negate the impact that people have on the ozone or the planet.
I think that's probably the best definition I've ever heard on that topic. So I'm going to go back and review that often. Thank you.
I have done 5 or 6 really intense long interviews with different people about carbon credits, from the exchange platform to the breakdown to how it's, the agronomy around it. And then I'm working directly with Bruce Dietzen, who is doing a drawdown project calculating how hemp impacts all of the different facets, from construction and building materials to textiles to oil and gas, on both the sequestration and the avoidance. And they're at like 4 or 5 gigatons a year can be sequestered through hemp products.
So what kind of opportunities does this open up for, I think say like larger companies that they're going to start putting that into like their public sustainability reports? What does that open up for the hemp industry?
Hemp, I think, is definitely at the forefront of these discussions also, right? When we look at just the carbon footprint or the sequestering, because of how fast it grows and how much it grows, and then it being put into an end product. I think we have this is again maybe a serendipitous moment similar to the pandemic, that it really shined light on the infrastructure for manufacturing and the supply chain, and then the opportunity we have to produce our own credit. There's a gentleman out of Canada who grew a number of acres on an airport property, and now the airport is carbon neutral, right? And so now that's a huge, I want to go to our airport and say, listen, let's take your 40 acres that are around this field and, be able to sequester and now trade your own credits when you originally were very carbon positive, right?
No, it's exciting. So on that front, I mean, is there anything the industry needs to succeed in, say, like the next 3 to 5 years, but they may not be getting that yet today?
Two things. I think there has to be a focus on seed production, right? As we bring in infrastructure for processing, who's providing seeds? And currently, the United States has been purchasing seeds from Europe and China and other places. And Europe is not big enough to supply the US demand once we come on board. And to get us on board, we've got to have capital, and bridging those gaps. And I think we've talked before about this chicken and egg is capital really has to be willing to bring capital in and understand that this is not an overnight success, that we have to then, once we have the facility, then we can contract with those farmers. But that process and working with both sides of this. What I hear often in the venture capital space is, this is new and nobody wants to put their head out so the next guy coming in can make all the money. But this really is about impact and the impact that it has. And so we're seeing a lot of capital move on the impact investing and environmental and government sustainability.
Is that trend accelerating where that capital is coming in and being deployed to the right places? I have to think that, it has to be a lot more impact investors that want to deploy capital in a mission-driven way.
It was revealed, right, at the need. The need is even more at the forefront, not just the health and wellness side, but also, the manufacturing and all these opportunities we have to provide rural communities a way to keep. Like I live close to some tribal land that was heavy oil and gas, and now they're not mining. That town is desolate. We have an opportunity to bring in manufacturing, whether it's for the energy sector or construction and building materials, that could turn that town around. And I think that, now there's been enough education because of the CBD and the medical and the recreational, advocates that they can say, wait, this also does all of these other things. And these are also opportunities to, make an impact or shift the paradigm.
Mandi, this has been beyond valuable and very insightful, and I'm excited for this to get out and across the interweb universe. So for those out there that want to just continue to follow along with your work and get connected with the Global Hemp Association, please give your plug and recommendation of where you want them to go.
Sure, globalhempassociation.org or any of our social channels, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch. It's Global Hemp Association. You can find a ton of content on our YouTube channel, and then our community platform. If you're interested in joining the community, you can do it through our website or hemphallway.com. Everybody joins the Hemp Hallway to connect and chat and build relationships. I was always sent to the hallway for talking, so it was fitting.
Love it. All right, that's Mandi Kerr, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.